Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another video. This time around, I'm checking out a new interview that took place on WCCFTech. This is WCCFTech.com, and they have an article with Naoki Yoshida from Final Fantasy XIV. That's a producer and director, if you didn't know, of Final Fantasy XIV. And in particular, I thought this was an interesting read, so I thought I'd share it with you guys and read out the questions and answers. I usually do this, but obviously I don't take credit from the website themselves, and indeed I obviously don't take credit from Chris Ray, who actually took part in this incredible interview where we actually got some very interesting bits. It's been a bit quiet lately on the interview front, especially as we're closing into those Christmas holidays. However, there are some interviews surfacing, and what a great time to actually read through these. And there will be a link in the description to this article. Go and give it some love if you wish to. So first of all, Chris Ray asks, I suppose the first thing I want to talk about is the growth of Final Fantasy XIV. It's bigger than it's ever been before. You've got more users, more subscribers than ever before. What do you see as the driving reason behind this success? Now, Yoshida says, that's a difficult question because so many different elements have combined. You may think it's been more of a natural thing, given you're talking about an MMO title, but what you're trying to do with Final Fantasy XIV is releasing a major update every 3.5 months. It's hard to keep up the pace, releasing a great amount of content with a wide range of features, with us also working on releasing a major expansion every 2 years. We're trying to give out lots of different type of content, lots of different ways for players to play. On top of that, it's how Final Fantasy XIV as game design is established. It's not about forcing players to keep playing the game consistently. If you just consume everything with each major patch, then you've played everything, then you can play other games. You can spend your time and plan around your timing. If you want to come back to Final Fantasy XIV, you can come back and catch up easily. Everybody has different hobbies and ways they want to spend their time. They're quite busy. Thanks to the game cycle we've established, it's easier to accommodate the players, to let them use their own time, which is kind of unique to Final Fantasy XIV. By keeping that up, it's brought the world of Final Fantasy XIV to the stage that we're in now. Yoshida continues, you may know that the original release was a massive failure, but we came back to the market because of the players who were so passionate about the game, who have love towards it and were so supportive. That really helped us, and we wanted to create a really great content for them. They saw that and it created a synergy with them. They brought in new players through word of mouth and brought in more. We saw the really great circulation of this synergy. We're all working together, the development team, community and everybody, so I think that's the biggest reason that we have succeeded with Final Fantasy XIV. The next question was, so how exactly was it that you came to move from the original to what we see now, and what primarily did you focus on? Yoshida says, looking back to when the original Final Fantasy XIV was released, I was more in the development team. I was outside and looking at how they were trying to manage the situation. The feedback that the development team received from players was that even though they had different functions, there wasn't the core element that let people have fun. That was the biggest complaint and led to players doubting the original development team. We really thought it was important to establish a comeback to the market by creating a Realm Reborn using our theme park idea. So the development team does have their own wishes and ideas, but there has to be a lot of elements and factors within an MMORPG. We wanted to create the new concept of making this game more story-driven, which let us reach a Realm Reborn. So this next section, they talk about live services, which is quite interesting. Chris says, I see Final Fantasy XIV as a prime example of a live service game gone right. With some others, it seems the games are simply dropped, or the right content isn't released. Do you see the path to success is from content that makes players want to come back, not just content that's simply there to do? Yoshi says, there are different types of games out there. One is the offline title. Just release it and that's it. And the other type is the live service, like an MMORPG. Having worked on both, I think the type of service is different. Of course, we create both the offline and online titles, so we want players to enjoy the games. That kind of thinking works into the development of both types of game. Speaking about the console game, we refer to it as the roller coaster cycle. You build up the excitement quickly, starting to play it and get to the peak of it quickly, but then it starts to tail off. You can still have this excitement in a short amount of time, but it still generates excitement. What's different in an MMORPG or online title, which can also be said for the Battle Royale games, is that we're creating a theme park. For the online title, it's important to have different types of activities so that people all want to come back to the gameplay. Because I did a roller coaster last time, this time I want to try out a merry-go-round. That's the basic mindset we have for an online service so that it repeatedly engages players. Yoshi continues, all we're doing is offering those services to players. That's why we need to understand what the players want. It's very important, even in such as the food industry, where if you own a restaurant, and you may want to ask your customers what they like and what they want to have on the menu. It's the same for a game service as well. So since we're giving a service to players, it's important for us to understand what they'd like and what they don't like. So Chris, he says, if something is like a theme park and somebody builds another type of theme park next to us, it's really important for us to go in and research what they're offering. This is also because the players have the freedom to do anything. They may come to us, but they could also go there and naturally start to compare them. It's really important for us to see what we can offer to make us unique, but also to research and study our competitors. It's crucial to have the mindset where we see our surroundings and help raise us to the next level. It's then asked, as somebody who brought the game when it was released, I think that where you've succeeded, getting fun to the players, consistently adding variety and value, the MMO market is full of failed titles, a pitfall you avoided by focusing on getting fun content to players. Is it partly you having fun when designing and developing it? Yoshi says, so yes, we want to have fun when creating content in our games. When we do our brainstorming session with our developers, everybody's eyes light up, which is cool to say. If we can make these ideas real, maybe we can have the players feeling like that too. I think it's my responsibility to reach out to possible parties and speak to them. At the end of the day, we want the game to be fun, but we also want the development process to be fun as well. Looking back at how it was for MMO titles, where some development teams were seen in conflict with the community, they'd be seen as trying to control the players. Here we have the common thing we love, and we're all like-minded people. We want the players of Final Fantasy XIV to see it as their own title, something they can take pride in. Ultimately, we want to create an environment that is happy for everybody. It can be difficult to do, but if somebody wants to generate a large-scale online service in the future, I think this kind of mindset is really important and a great factor for success. So the next section is all about crossovers from Nier Automata, he says, to hopefully Blizzard and Keanu Reeves. So this will be interesting. Chris says, what I find interesting is your ability to draw on other Square Enix IPs, such as Nier. Will you be looking at working with other IPs as well? Yoshi says, we just want to be careful when talking about the next crossover partner, because something could be looked at as confirmation. So the reason why we did this crossover is that the developers have a great amount of respect for their partner title or IPs. We can create great quality content by working together with partners and their title. It's not that we're trying to generate buzz from players or media. Our main focus and basis for a crossover are that we want to work with somebody who can create content together with us. I don't really want to specify just one or two titles. I want to work with as many great developers and creators as possible. I have a couple of ideas, but these are strictly personal ideas, and this isn't any confirmation of working with these people or IPs. Chris says, oh, I completely understand that. These are just ideas you have. So Yoshi says, so because I'm a big fan of Blizzard and now World of Warcraft has announced a new expansion with the word shadow in it, it would be cool to do some kind of crossover. Also, Diablo 4 has been announced, and Diablo is the first online title that I was really immersed in. It would be cool, again, to work with them. Speaking for our sound director, Masayoshi Soken, he's a massive fan of Overwatch, so he would say he wants to do a crossover with Overwatch. Yoshi says, also the developers, including myself, are the players as well. When we feel fun with some games, we want to work with them, and we believe that we can create something great for the player who will also have fun. It's cool to have this mindset because when you have fun with something, you want to release it and generate something for others to have the same sort of fun. On the other hand, it can be sad because there are so many Final Fantasy XIV players in the other development teams as well. For example, there are players of 14 in the development teams of Anthem and Cyberpunk. At events, people can ask me to play their game and spend some time together. It would be really cool to work with them. So one example we could say is that we could maybe have Keanu Reeves in Final Fantasy XIV one day. Chris says, if you did that, I'd be stood there looking at talking to Keanu Reeves all day thinking, I'm happy with this, and I'm a huge fan of his, Chris laughs. Yoshi also laughs and says, I'm a big fan of Keanu Reeves too. So the next section of the interview is talking about big changes to come for Final Fantasy XIV. Chris says, so how do you see the future of Final Fantasy XIV and what will you be driving towards? Yoshida says, now we've expanded more and more, exploring uncharted territory, we do feel like we're reaching the point of truly being a unique MMORPG. We have no intentions of stopping anytime soon and want to continue expanding, reaching out further and further. Chris says, right, let's make this a long one. So you've mentioned that post Shadowbringers you'll have some cool ideas for the future. Do you have anything solid about what the future of 14 looks like? For example, expanding on dungeons or concerted efforts to a larger degree than in the past? Yoshi responds, so there are two big aspects we can talk about at the moment. The first is how the narrative will develop, and the second is how game content can expand in the future. Storyline-wise, we are currently nearing the end of the Hydaelyn Zodiac arc, so we are nearing the climax of the storyline. Our hope is to make a very clean ending to the current arc that the players will enjoy. Of course, this doesn't mean it's the end of Final Fantasy XIV. We may expand for another arc that goes across for several expansions, or we may take one expansion and make a one-off sort of storyline. We haven't reached any conclusion yet. We're still discussing it. What we don't want to do is keep continuing and resuscitating it just for the sake of continuing it. All we want to do is bring out a great story experience for the players, one with a great conclusion. That's the center of our thinking. Yoshi says on the second point about the game content, for the ones we've already established, like instances for example, we have no idea to change drastically. The developers have already started to see how they need to work on these. The workflow is established and polished already. Rather than tweaking or changing, it'll be good for us to deliver new areas and content. Looking at the current status of the game, we think we've got enough amount and variation of content already. We're hoping to change the direction a little bit to more social aspects. We want players to feel like Final Fantasy XIV is their home, so they want to come back to the game. To enhance that feeling, we included features like playing instruments in the game or G-pose, letting players take great pictures. The direction we want to explore is that kind of aspect and the story that we've talked about. And that wraps up the incredible interview there with WCCFTech with Chris Ray. Of course, there will be a link to this in a description. Go and give it some love and some hits because it clearly deserves it. That's actually a really good interview. I enjoyed a lot of those concepts. The idea of working with World of Warcraft in a crossover no doubt tickles a few people's fancy. Some people will be completely blown away by that idea. It's, none of this is set in stone. These are just his ideas. But what an interesting crossover that would be, especially considering, you could tie that into maybe one of the other lost shards maybe or something like that. It could be really fun to explore that territory. He seems to be very positive about the future, Yoshi P I'm talking about. So yeah, it looks like we've got a fair few years to go, and they're not going to be sort of like strangle-holding the storyline too much. It will go as far as the storyline can take itself without just needlessly rehashing things, which is great to hear because that's one of my least favorite things in video games. Either way, like I say, check this out in the description. Thank you kindly for watching. If you have any interesting comments, feel free to post them below and start a conversation, and I'll join in as well. Thank you kindly for watching once again, and I'll see you all next time.